From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Fentanyl seizures are skyrocketing across the state. See how you can help in your local communities. Coming up.
And if we can produce enough of it for ourselves to use, why does the U.S. import oil? We'll take a closer look at the complexity of that question coming up at 6:34.
It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question. There's a live look on the patio. It is damp out there. That might be the biggest understatement I've uttered this week. It is raining hard.
It really is. And we picked up a little over 15,100s here at the station since the rain began early this morning.
Right.
I want to show you Bozeman
not just
Pass.
rain, wow.
We are dealing with snow. It is going to be slick if you're traveling Bozeman Pass for today. Leave extra time. Expect slick conditions. The ground temperature at the freezing mark. That means that we're going to start dealing with some ice on a few of those area roadways, and of course that active snow keeping that visibility down. Temperatures into the 30s. Most of that moisture is just continuing to work its way north and west. That sounds backwards, right?
Right.
Well, this system is actually centered down to our south, and this is going to be a big travel concern, including maybe some closed highways into eastern Montana and back into the Dakotas. They're dealing with blizzard conditions as you go through the weekend. Daytime highs into the upper 30s, low 40s. Snow trying to mix in at times. Is really a mountain event, but it could impact a few areas other than mountains. We'll talk more about this, of course, coming up from the weather patio outside where it's wet. Rainy.
Find that umbrella.
Yeah, I am.
6:31, our top story this half hour. Fentanyl's grip on Montana, unfortunately, continues to grow. Take a look at these numbers. Last year, arrests increased 1,600% year to year, from 1 arrest in 2020 to 17 in 2021. This year alone, through March 15th, Montana Highway Patrol troopers have seized more than 12,000 fentanyl pills. That's 3 times the total of all of 2021. Now, MTN's Jane McDonald introduces us to one of the allies in the fight against these drugs. Gets a different kind of training to be a standout member of the team.
From pill seizures to arrests, the fentanyl problem is quickly gripping the state.
This is our community. This is where we live. It's where our families are.
Captain Kamerman says that last month, 6,500 lethal fentanyl doses were seized in Gallatin County.
This stuff is incredibly dangerous. We know large shipments of fentanyl and methamphetamine, but fentanyl specifically are coming across that southern border.
In 2018, 50 grams of fentanyl was seized. Last year, nearly 3,800 tablets. And in the first 3 months of 2022, 12,079 pills have been seized by Montana Highway Patrol troopers. And according to the U.S. Department of Justice, drug traffickers are combining fentanyl or related compounds with other drugs to increase their potency and profit.
He's cued in, I think, a few times already that we've had fentanyl. And a lot of the fentanyl we're seeing isn't just the powder form or pills. A lot of it's coming through counterfeit pills.
From a kennel at the pound to training in Helena, and today serving the community of Bozeman.
Aren't you, buddy?
In all the years of crime fighting and drug fighting that we've done in this country, there's still simply no better tool than a dog's nose.
Hey, wanna find dope? Come here. Hey.
Stretch is a very eager dog, and he wants to work and wants to find drugs in every car.
Hey, we're not finding drugs right now.
We know canines work. They're our single best drug interdiction tool here in Montana.
Stretch is one of those dogs. Joining the force late last year, he's trained on 3 opioids: cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine and their derivatives. The 3 drugs often laced with fentanyl.
Because generally people are moving fentanyl, they're using something else as well, which is generally heroin or meth.
Trying to do whatever we can to get in front of it, to prevent those overdoses, to prevent this falling into the hands of children. And to hold these folks accountable who are bringing it to our community from elsewhere.
And though many of the seizures are happening along the highway systems, with Bozeman being a stone's throw away from I-90 and 191, Captain Swanson says a valuable tool lies in our own community.
One of our best resources here are the people who live in this community.
Whether it be keeping an eye out in your neighborhood or talking with family members that may be struggling with addiction. In Bozeman, Jane McDonald, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Jane. 6:34 now. About 100 countries produce crude oil. The fracking boom in 2018 put the U.S. on the map as the world's top producer. So if we have plenty here at home, why is America still importing millions of barrels each day from beyond our borders? Newsy's James Packard explains.
Crayons, hair coloring, tents, eyeglasses, credit cards, they all have one thing in common. They are made of petroleum. Wait, what?
Crude oil is the input for a wide variety of products, not just for gasoline that we get at the pump.
Petroleum, which is found in crude oil, is used to produce transportation fuels, fuel oils for heating and electricity, road oil, asphalt. But petroleum products are also used to make synthetic materials, chemical products, and various plastics that are found in many items you have at home. The U.S. is the world's largest oil consumer. The nation uses more than 19 million barrels of oil a day. That's more than India, Japan, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Brazil's daily consumption combined, according to Worldometer. So where does all that oil come from? Most of it from here at home. Data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration shows 65% of oil is produced domestically. The other 35% comes from international partners. To give you an idea of how much that is, last year the U.S. imported more than 8 million barrels of petroleum daily from 73 countries. Our neighbor to the north, Canada, supplied more than half of the U.S. imported oil last year. But America isn't just a top oil consumer. It is a key producer.
The United States produces far more oil domestically than all the European countries combined.
The U.S. took the title of the world's top crude oil producer in 2018. The nation surpassed Russia for the first time since 1999 and Saudi Arabia for the first time in over 2 decades. The oil industry saw noticeable growth after the Great Recession in 2008. American entrepreneurs developed new extraction technologies in hydraulic fracturing, or fracking, that allowed companies to access oil and gas that were previously unreachable. This helped cut production costs and allowed the country to produce more energy and become less dependent on oil from other partners. According to the Independent Petroleum Association of America, annual U.S. oil production increased 75% from 2007 to 2016. Think about it in barrels produced per day. The average went from 7 million in 2008 to over 16 million in 2020.
We're approaching a record levels of oil and gas production in the United States, and we're on track to set a record oil production next year.
32 states produce crude oil. Yet in 2020, nearly 3/4 of total production came from just 5 of them. Texas made up over 40% of the nation's production. The war in Ukraine has brought renewed focus on why the U.S. brings in oil from beyond our borders.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports.
For context, Russian oil made up 8% of U.S. oil imports last year. That may not seem high, yet imports rose last summer to levels not seen in nearly a decade. Here's why. A century-old law known as the Jones Act requires all vessels between U.S. ports to be American-made and of a certain size. Oil buyers on the east and west coast don't have access to refinery pipeline connections. So to cut down on the costs of shipping, they turned away from importing from the Gulf of Mexico and leaned on other countries.
It's cheaper to bring oil from Ecuador than it is all the way from the Gulf of Mexico, because in the Gulf of Mexico, that oil would need to be put on land in the Gulf of Mexico, put then on a tanker, sent back out through the Gulf of Mexico, and then eventually through the Panama Canal and here to California.
It also comes down to chemistry. Oil is not consumed directly. It must be refined in order to make our everyday products. The viscosity, or thickness, of oil can either be light or heavy, a characterization that largely determines the process needed to refine it into fuel and other products. America's fracking boom mostly produced light crude oil. Yet many refineries are not equipped to distill the oil drilled from the Gulf Coast. They can, however, produce heavy oil, which is why the U.S. imports so much in order to make use of existing infrastructure. To reconfigure refineries to process different oil, that costs a lot of money, an investment many companies might not be willing to make. James Packard, Newsy.